Why these horrors must be so, I never could pretend to know. It isn't I, dear Lord, who can justify your ways to man. Soon I'll understand it all and cease to wonder. So my small spark will blaze intensely bright and go out in an endless night. Welcome now to bread and wine, creature comfort, heavenly sign. Winter will grow dark and cold before the wattle turns to gold.
Fishermen uncovered an unusual sight this morning 3 kilometres south of Barooby Point on Stockton Beach. The 9-metre sloop, the Hazy D, forlornly washed onto the beach after running aground overnight on its first voyage under new owner Brian Varnum. He and 4 other experienced yachtsmen were taking a routine run down the coast. Only hours out to sea, the men realised their compass was playing up and were forced to navigate by sight.
It was an extremely dark night. There was no coloured cloud, there was no moon. The only lights that we could see was Anna Bay, which is behind us there, which we always kept to our right. Really the next thing we knew, we'd run aground.
Disorientated in the pitch black conditions, skipper Brian Varnum thought the boat had hit a sandbank many kilometres out to sea. The crew members donned life jackets and prepared for a long swim.
Frankly, I believed if 5 of us had to swim 3 miles, that maybe somebody wouldn't make it.
But after contact with the water police and rescue helicopter around midnight, the crew realised they had run onto the beach. While the surf was just above a metre, the $45,000 yacht's rudder and keel were badly damaged by the waves. The men scrambled onto the beach and set up camp till a rescue program could be organised. With a high tide and help from a fishing trawler, the sailors expect the Hazy D can be towed back to Port Stephens tonight after a less than promising start.
I bought it from the previous owner in Port Stephens, and this was just bringing it home.
So what do you think about this first trip?
Memorable.
Rachel swung into action early with beautiful timing and placement. And her touch wasn't too bad either. Hurricane Helen was always going to keep the youngster honest. Right on top from the start, it wasn't long before Rachel had set point. Kellersey hit back to take the opening 2 games of the second set with some aggressive tactics. But Rachel had a reply to everything the Canadian dished up. And it takes more than a forehand to win matches. Rachel had many chances to go to a 5-2 lead in the second set, but Kellersey wouldn't say die and broke back. With tremendous crowd support, Rachel raced to a 4-point lead in the tie-break. Kellersey got a couple back, but Rachel still had 2 match points. What a win for the Wiz from Newcastle in straight sets, 6-2, 7-6.
Spectators and interested people strolling through, it's in partial reality.
Well, you people have got a very
Racing from an outside court where she was warming up to centre court after McEnroe had been defaulted wasn't the ideal mental preparation for a match, but the improving youngster showed she was right in the match, even with the odd bit of luck. And with forehands like this, it was no wonder she grabbed the first set 6-3. Maliva comes from a line of family champions who know how to hang in on long rallies, and the Bulgarian started to get back into the match. The second set was close, but Maliva reeled off a couple of good backhands to take it 6-4. With tremendous crowd support behind her, but visibly tiring, Rachel couldn't stop the double-fisted fireball of Maliva. Serving at 1-5 down in the third set, and at 15:40, Rachel was well and truly behind the 8-ball. It was a great win for Maliva, but a super performance by Rachel in her home Grand Slam tournament. She acknowledged the newfound fan club by putting pen to paper, something Rachel will be doing for many years to come. It was another Englishman who stole the show last year. The great white kipper Russell Clayton blitzed the field to win by 7 shots. This year it will be up to Ricky Willison and Craig Casals to emulate his feat. And after a 24-hour sleepless flight from London, to meet some of the locals was a frightening sight. At 30 years of age, Willison has played superb golf in the past 3 years, making the cut in the British Open in 1987. He was a semi-finalist in the English Amateur Championship. He won the home international with his English teammates in 88 and 89 and helped his London club Ealing to the European Championship last year. Willison was also the champion of champions in 89 and even with a difficult handicap of +2 will be a big threat on the weekend. Something to please Willison today was the course and conditions.
It's a great place to come to, and it's my first trip down to Australia, and looking at the course it looks as though it's going to be a good test. The wind's as it would be, I should imagine, in England, and it looks as though it could be quite a good week.
So does the wind suit your game?
I hope so. Not all the time. Certainly doesn't all the time, but yeah, it does a lot. I prefer to play in the wind. Yeah.
His travelling partner Craig Casals is linked to our town, having been raised in Newcastle on Tyne, our sister city. Craig has been an England representative for the past 3 years, a Walker Cup member with Russell Clayton last year, a British amateur finalist and the winner of the South East of Scotland Championships with a 4-round total of 15 under par. Also on a +2 handicap, the 20-year-old Casals still has fond memories of his Walker Cup debut.
It was something that'll never go from my mind, hopefully.
And if he can conquer a little nagging hand injury and stay in good touch, a pro career is just around the corner.
I will one day. That has been my main ambition for about the last 3 years, to turn professional.
About 10 demonstrators stood in front of workers and machinery, demanding that the demolition should stop. The Newcastle site has been idle for more than a week after the Department of Planning placed a ban on work till the area was inspected for historical significance. However, workers returned yesterday, ignoring a verbal warning from authorities to stay away. Protest groups claim the workers are acting illegally and say they will occupy the site till they get confirmation that the area will be preserved. So far, there have been no arrests. The Carrington Chambers site has been idle for more than a week, pending an historical study ordered by the Department of Planning. But while archaeologist Dr Damaris Bairstow was on site for the Heritage Act inspection, demolishers continue to remove the old sandstone walls. The contractors say they have no legal obligation to stop work, and with machinery costing around $1,000 a day, delays are crippling. A small group of protesters, infuriated by this approach, took matters into their own hands and occupied the site.
The lawlessness that's been going on in this city since the earthquake is absolutely astounding.
Police were called in to calm the parties down, and eventually threats of arrests moved the protesters away from the site. According to the Department of Planning, the demolishers have now agreed to hold off any more work until Thursday. Dr Bairstow will tonight report to the department on options for the area. While she admits the walls are not of the convict era, she says the site must be protected for a detailed inspection.
This demolition should be halted before and enable us to investigate by archaeological means what lies beneath the surface we have now.
Tonight, Council says Dr Bairstow's report will be studied before any decision is made on the site's future.
McWilliams is the first cab off the rank this season. The 24 tonnes of Pinot Noir grapes picked today and tomorrow are destined to fill 1,000 cases of premium quality champagne. The champagne varieties are hand rather than machine picked, with the whole bunch then pressed to ensure minimum pigment in the juice. From red grapes comes white sparkling wine. Champagne remains a touchy word, with the French determined to outlaw its use outside of their own industry. Winemakers say the taste of the Australian public is changing. Bulk wines are out, with good quality table wines taking a stronger hold on the market.
The premium wine market is going to be where the greatest improvement in sales is going to be, and the Hunter Valley is positioned just where that market will improve. The Hunter Valley has been making premium quality bottled wines for many, many years, and we're positioned very well for the change in consumer demand.
Winemaker Bruce Tyrrell says this season will bring a 20% increase on last year's harvest. While it's difficult to determine quality until the grapes hit the crusher, he predicts the vintage will produce some memorable reds.
It looks like one of those vintages where everything's going to come together. All the whites are going to be ripe over a couple of weeks, and then we might have a break of a few days, and then suddenly all the red's going to be ready to pick. So it'll be fairly short, sharp vintage, I reckon.
It will be 2.5 years before the fruit picked today reaches the tasting room. For the moment, winemakers are watching the weather closely, hopeful that ideal conditions will deliver an anticipated 30,000 tonnes of fruit in the 1990 vintage.
These photos will help Newcastle City Council rebuild Hamilton. Consultants and architects will use them to devise a development plan for the area. The photos are the key to retaining the character of Beaumont Street, documenting the changes over the years and the aesthetic uniqueness of the area. The City Library has already received a number of photos, but they need more. They can be dropped into any regional branch where they will be copied and returned to the owner. Once the consultant's report has been completed, the photos will be kept in the local history section of the library.
Mr Carr described the Shadow Cabinet's visit as an information-gathering tour. Informal talks in Newcastle Council chambers were followed by an inspection of the city. Mr Carr later admitted during the bus trip around the CBD that the first-hand picture of destruction was far beyond impressions gained before his visit. Local government leaders and politicians ended the tour with a walk along the scene of the most dramatic reconstruction work, Beaumont Street. Council Building Officer Harold Stewart told Mr Carr the Hamilton community still had many challenges to overcome.
What we're trying to do now is just get proper hoardings around it so that we can open up and make it safe for people and get these businesses open again. But their problems aren't necessarily the physical ones, they're the insurance ones and the traumatic ones.
Later, Mr Carr said he would not resort to the indignity of using the inspection as a political tool.
There's not a great deal an opposition can do, but we can listen to people and we can support the submissions that emerge from the City Council, from the Chamber and from other community groups who've got a case for assistance to put to government.
Nevertheless, Mr Carr said the opposition would be most effective playing a watchdog role, ensuring Newcastle received full entitlements.
The challenge from now on is to make sure that the government assistance that's been promised does arrive, to make sure that the assistance reaches the people in greatest need, to make sure that the attention from the rest of New South Wales and the rest of Australia doesn't fall off.
Handling around 5 tonnes of elephant is heavy work by anyone's standards. And for trainer Fred Maynard, who turned 60 today, it's time for a rest.
Oh, well, I'm getting a bit slow. I'm getting older now, you know. And passing over to Tony, who's a bit younger, and he can keep up with me because they move pretty fast, these animals. And I've had enough 30 years, and Tony's going to take it on now. I hope he's going for the next 30.
Like his father, 20-year-old Tony has spent his life in the circus, working with animals of all sorts, but in particular, Gooey, Medini and Sheba. 40-year-old Sheba has been with Perry Brothers Circus for 30 years and has become part of the family. While the elephants can be a handful, especially with cameramen, Tony says it takes many years to win their respect.
You couldn't take a stranger and say, look, you go in and work these elephants because...
Things they might do, like what they're doing now, you know, a normal person would probably be frightened and think they're going to do something to them or anything, you know.
This cameraman will be getting frightened in a minute too.
Well, I imagine he is a bit frightened.
Perry Brothers and Robinson's Circus will be performing twice daily beside the International Sports Centre till Monday.
With so many of today's mothers also being working professionals, the nanny has become a vital commodity. Every week around the country, the want columns are crammed with ads seeking help, and according to Pam Farrelly, founder of the Newcastle Nanny Consultancy, that's only the tip of the iceberg. She says one London agency claims it can place 80 nannies in jobs a week. In Canada, the demand is just as high. With that in mind, Pam put out her feelers amongst the hunters' young people and realised while interest in a career in nannying was high, opportunities were not.
I get calls even now with girls asking me about going to nanny schools, and I knew they were going down to Sydney, they were going to Brisbane and even going to Adelaide.
Pam launched the Newcastle school a little tentatively at first with a series of ads, and she's described the response as incredible. The phone has run hot with inquiries. When we arrived today, she was busy interviewing 3 applicants and even answered the questions from a woman keen to know about her prospects of securing a nanny. The first course will begin tonight and it's already full, and the list is quickly filling for next semester. The average age is 17 to 20. All of the students for this course are female. They'll spend their 3 nights a week being trained in child health and education, personal development and home care. And by the time their 10 weeks are up, believe they'll have secured themselves a solid career and a stint overseas.
Work in Sydney, I'd say. Work in Australia first for a year or 2, then I'm looking at travelling overseas.
I want to travel overseas, so it would be a good opportunity to travel overseas and be paid for it instead of paying for it, instead of not earning money while you're over there.
Probably hopefully go overseas to Canada and anything like that.
For the 75 Courtman Hall residents, the place they normally call home will remain closed at least until April. While damage is restricted to the interior, the building is still settling down and repair work cannot begin until final assessments are carried out. Immediately after the quake, most residents stayed with relatives and friends. The Disaster Welfare Recovery Centre has now moved 27 senior citizens to the Stockton Hospital Nurses' Quarters, but most others will now live at the Ambassador Motel. The entire second floor has been taken over, and for the next few months, these evacuees will enjoy the life normally reserved for visiting business people and travellers. Managers of the Courtman Hall Hostel have provided a makeshift office, kitchen and lounge area. 91-year-old Heather Woodgate has lived in the Hunter all her life and will never forget December 28.
See, I walked out with what I had on.
Heather, like the 39 others, has settled in well, but said this about the motel.
No, not exactly like home, but it's quite comfortable.
Here she has to share her room, whereas back at Courtman Hall, Heather lives comfortably alone. But does she appreciate her temporary newfound accommodation?
Oh yes, I'm lucky to be alive really, aren't I?